So we all know that machine learning is a new technique to analyze the data, to interpret the data, to find out the information, and even sometimes it happens that what human will not be able to detect, that machine learning algorithms and process will be able to detect. Now this machine learning algorithms, deep learnings are now employed in financial institution. Even the governments are also using to trace out any illegal activities going on with respect to the payments or with respect to any other transfer of goods and services. What are the needs and demands of the people? Means there is a hell lot of data, and now they need a system which can analyze the data, which can interpret the data, can find out something useful from that data, and for that we are using the machine learning. Now understand the word machine learning means it is just going to work like a human. What human do? They learn from their experience. Similarly the machine also learn. They learn from the past data. Means suppose we have fed few things into the data. That's suppose like there is a cat, there is a dog, there is a picture of lion as well. So my machine, I've told the machine that the cat looks like a lion. Okay, cat look like a lion. So in that scenario, this is something new learned by the system. Now if anyhow in future if they will find somehow tiger, okay, now my system will try to resemble to whom the tiger look likes, whether it's a unique or whether it's matching someone from the system itself. So time to time the machine keeps on learning, the machine keeps on getting updated. So machine learning is one of the field of the artificial intelligence where we use the algorithm, and with the help of the algorithm they will try to find out what the objective of the user of the data is. Now machine learning can be supervised as well as unsupervised machine learning. Now what is this supervised machine learning? This is a statistical model. First point, statistical model, and it can predict the outcome based on the specified input. Means first of all you have to give the inputs, and based on the input it will give you some output. Means suppose I'll give like this, that this is my GDP, this is my interest rate, this is my unemployment rate, what should be the market index of USA. Okay, so based on the input it will identify the output. Then what is unsupervised machine learning? It themselves identify the pattern from the data without giving any kind of the variable. Means it looks for the pattern, and supervised machine learning will take into account the inputs, and based on those inputs they will find out the output. Means the dependent variable and the independent variable. But in the unsupervised they try to find out any kind of pattern, any kind of relationship among the data. So machine learning is useful in order to identify the pattern, the relationship in the data, as well as it can make out of the sample prediction as well. Previously in the few topics we have seen with respect to the regression, there are some issues, but here we can make out of the sample prediction as well. Now what we do to make a perfect model? We actually run it thousands and millions of times so that it can improve. Okay, why? Because we know that it learns from the experience. The more and more experience will give, the more and more better it will become. Now supervised learning can also analyze the non-parametric and non-linear relationship, and at the end it can give you the inference about the dependent and the independent variable. See, supervised learning approach will take into account the input, but what if the data is non-linear as well as non-parametric? It's okay, it won't mind, but at the end it will give you the inference about the dependent and the independent variable. Now we have the three approaches of the machine learning. What are those three approaches? Regression, classification and clustering. Regression and classification are the part of supervised learning, and clustering is the part of unsupervised learning. Now what is regression? We all know. Inside the regression we have the linear as well as the non-linear. What are those non-linear methods? Penalized regression is the part of non-linear regression. Second is our classification. It makes the prediction for the discrete and the dependent variables. And the clustering is the part of unsupervised, so it takes into account all the data without including any dependent variable. Such as if I'll talk about the entry money laundering or terrorism financing, so out of crores of entry, your data don't know which entry belongs to the terrorism or anti money or money laundering. So if there is a new data coming, so it's the duty of the model to identify which amount belongs to the money laundering or financing of terrorism. So they don't have any previous data, they don't have any dependent variable, so how they will find out the value? They find out the value based on the parameters. Now, if you are creating a model, whether it's machine learning or deep learning, there will be some amount of noise, or we call it as a random error. So we cannot say that they are showing the 100% true relationship between the dependent and the independent variable. So there is always a problem of overfitting. And again, if there is a overfitting issues, then the data or the model will not perform well in out of the sample data set. Then we have the concept of bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is that we train our model in such a way that it can detect the fraudulent activities inside the data. Earlier I told you that how I will make my model efficient by giving it trial thousands and millions of times. So what we call it as a bagging. Okay, BAGGING. Bagging means making the trials thousands and millions of times to make my model efficient. Apart from the bagging, we can do one more thing to make our model more efficient by combining my model with some other model. Okay, means I have my model, but I combine my model with some other model. We call it as ensemble. We call it as ensemble, and that will further help to improve the out of the sample predictive capabilities of the model. So what machine learning is actually doing? They are taking the past data into account, and based on those past data, they are trying to predict the future. Now, machine learning basically takes into account the well-defined and the structured database. But what if your database is not well-defined and if it is not structured? For that we use the deep learning, means we call it as the advanced version of the machine learning. And deep learning is something that mimics the human brain. Okay, means there were the several layers of the algorithm, and we train them in such a way that they will convert the raw data into a pattern. Okay, and from those pattern they can identify the relevant information. The example of the deep learning is the face recognition. Okay, the language understanding models are the deep learning methods. And these deep learning algorithms are trained in such a way that even they can trace out the emotions of the people involved. So they are extremely complex, and they require several millions and hundreds of millions of data set in order to be properly trained. Now, the use of machine learning and deep learning is very huge, and if you look at the financial institution, the banking companies, and even the non-financial institution are using the machine learning in their process. And basically it includes the stress testing, reporting on liquidity measures, capital, collateral. All these are the different applications of machine learning. So they need to structure their data, they need to analyze the data, and at the end they need to interpret the data. And their aim is to improve the quality of supervisory data. So if my data is well structured, I will be using the machine learning. But if my data is not of well structured, very low quality and high frequency, we are going to use the deep learning and neural networks. Also, this is helpful in detecting the fraud and credit risk, revenue modeling, surveillance of conduct and market abuse in tradings. Now, in the surveillance of conduct or market abuse, it includes to detect the rogue trading or insider trading, or any breach of activities which are prohibited by the regulatory authorities. So it's their duty to identify them as early as possible, because they can make the material impact on the financial market of the economy, and it can also damage the reputational position of the organization. Now, algorithms will not only monitor the trade, but it also monitor the behavior, okay, the time at which you are trading, and the entire portfolio is also analyzed along with the email of that particular client, calendar items, phone calls, check-in, check-out, all the details will be mapped together. And if it makes sense that they are trying to manipulate the market, they will be suspected. So if there is any deviation from the normal pattern, it will give an alarm to the financial compliance team. Now, next important point is that when we will incorporate the human decision with the machine learning, it can really improve the data and the information which we are getting from the data. Next important point is that when I am incorporating the machine learning system into my financial institution, I find it difficult. Why? Because of the legal complexity of sharing the past breach information with the developers. Now, what is big data? Big data will be having the huge amount of large volume. The quality of the data will be very low, high frequency, and it is unstructured data. Next, money laundering is difficult to define, and the financial institution, they don't have the enough feedback from the law enforcement agencies that which transaction are truly fraudulent. So if they don't know about the transaction which are fraudulent, which deals with the money laundering or financing of terrorism, so how they will give the instruction to their model that this kind of the data are fraudulent? So it is very difficult to do the money laundering tracing activities. Okay, so I end this topic here. Thank you.